now that the forms are mostly done and the WAT PI calls have started coming, in today's video, I'll talk about how you can essentially write a good WAT. A lot of students come to me asking, what if I don't understand the topic? What if I don't know much about the topic? Now, if you don't understand it at all, it'll be difficult to write. But as long as you understand some or most of it, there's a good way to ensure that you get as good a score as possible. Now, one caveat that I want to get out of the way beforehand is when it comes to your final selection score, typically your interview score will be somewhere around 30 to 50% in terms of weightage, and usually WAT will be somewhere around 10 points. So that means that this is not something which you need to spend a whole lot of time. Your interview is of course what is most important, but every mark counts, and you should definitely try to get as high a score as possible over here. So let's break down what are the different types of WATs and what are the different types of questions which would come and how you can actually attempt some of these. So I would classify WATs into three types. The first is the AWT or the analytical writing test, which happens in IMA. Here what will happen is you would be given a scenario, perhaps one argument. Think of it like your debate where you're given one topic and you need to either argue for or against it. You perhaps need to justify it, right? So you can have you could be asked to argue for the topic or against the topic, or you could also have a choice, right? So there'll be certain examples which we're going to put up on the MOCAT website. So you'll have the link in the description. So you can actually look at some of the samples of that. The other is the standardized written ability test. Here again, you could have something where you have to figure out the pros or the cons or perhaps both. It could also be a problem which requires solving. It could be something where they're asking your view. Now, typically when it comes to IIMs, this could be something which is related to current affairs, not necessarily something, static GK or something really very news oriented such as the budget, but it could be something which is under general discussion right now, right? Or it could be something which is of importance. For example, one of the WAT topics which has come up for students today in the IIM Lucknow WAT is, should IIMs actually have placements, since they're focusing on making people employable. So it could also be something which is a general relevant discussion. The other type, which typically you have in institutes like NMIMS and so on, is where you have a case study oriented WAT. Now, they used to have a case discussion earlier. So now what they've been doing till last year is that, it's been a business case. You will have almost a full page write up, and then you need to give your opinion, and it could be around strategies or solutions, or even an analysis of, whether the person or the company mentioned what they did, was it good or bad, is there some alternate solution, and so on. Again, we'll be putting some examples of these. So after watching the video, you can head over to mocat.com and check that out. The last type which we have, and this is something which we have in Symbiosis institutes typically, is also WAT, but this would be WAT with prompts. So you wouldn't have one topic, but you would have either 4 words or 4 images, and these act as prompts or as inspiration. Now, these are typically easier because you can really take it in any direction. So depending on what the words are or what the images are, whichever way inspiration strikes you, you can take it there. So for example, if you have an example of, let's say, a rocket, right? You can speak about space tourism, you could speak about climate change and humans going to Mars, or wanting to go to Mars. You could speak about the moon landing, you could speak about ISRO and everything that India is doing and how we are trying to get ahead. You could also talk about let's say something like the way under US President Kennedy, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and all ended up going to the moon, and how it was like a culmination of like a decades long dream. Really, whatever suits you, right? You could also, you could also look at it from a more abstract perspective and interpret rocket in terms of maybe boosting off to fulfill your goals, or somebody being alone, or facing a tough challenge. The astronauts, of course, in rockets, they face life-threatening situations. They pretty much like in that cramped area, maybe one person or a few people. You could also get inspired and speak about science and how humanity has gone ahead and so on. So as you can see, there are multiple things which you could do, and these are just some of the things which I thought about. Honestly, I have not thought of this. The rocket is something which came to mind, and then I just came up with these suggestions. And it's not me. You'll find that this is something a lot of different possible angles will actually strike you, especially when you have multiple images or multiple words. So today what we'll be doing is we'll be focusing more on the standardized WAT, where you have a particular topic. Again, it'll typically be something which is of interest now, or which is being discussed now, or something which is more like an evergreen problem, right? Something like a climate change. Maybe it could be something where we have to solve a problem. So a common thing which comes to mind is, something like, the pandemic. So how do countries get together and ensure that, we cooperate better for the next pandemic? Or how do we ensure that, the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is something which is mitigated as soon as possible? Or how can India do well despite the pandemic, or perhaps because of the pandemic? Because, when you think about it now, because of China's zero COVID policy, a lot of companies are wanting to have a China plus one sort of strategy and, wanting to move out of China, minimize Chinese operations, and India could be a winner over there, right? So you could have a problem plus solution sort of scenario. You could have something where, again, you have pros and cons. So, something like, let's say, social media, what are the benefits and the demerits, things like that and all. Or you could also have something where you're just analyzing it, right? So in which case you could take one side, or you could just look at it objectively and so on. So we look at some examples here so that you get an idea of how to write it. Now, much more than something like, knowing a lot of key facts or knowing a lot of statistics, while if you know it, this is good. But remember that what is really important is how you are analyzing it, right? So are you, breaking down the problem into maybe, its core components? Are you finding the root cause? How are you really splitting it up and perhaps then looking at solutions, or looking at the way forward or something like that? I think this will also become a little clearer once I give examples. So this is much more important than this. As a manager, that's what we're supposed to do, right? We are supposed to have logical reasoning ability, critical reasoning ability, problem solving ability. So that's the part which we need to focus on, as opposed to, just regurgitating a lot of facts and stuff like that. Now, if you know it, it's good. And on the other hand, if you don't know about the topic, it of course is bad. But this bit is much more important than this. So even if you don't know too much, but your logic is good and you're able to come up with points, that's going to be good enough for them. And also remember that, you will have somewhere between 250 to, let's say, a max of about 400, 450 words. Of course, in the physical VAT, you will have a piece of paper. So typically, it depends on your handwriting, but somewhere around this is all you have. So it's generally a mistake to, make your initial introduction with a lot of facts very huge. For that same reason, I usually recommend that, if you have a lot of information, you might not have time for quotes and all unless they're really hard hitting. So what I'd also encourage you to do, there's a video which we had made for the ZAT essay and how to write it, and we'll put the link in the description and here as well. So in that, what I had done was I had actually given a structure as to how many words should be your intro, and what is the body, how much is the conclusion, and so on. So because I'm not looking at the writing part of it here and just how you would break down the problem, maybe after this video you can watch that video if you haven't yet and get an idea of how to write it. So, but the point that I was making was, given that, there's not that many words, you might not be able to write everything focus on this bit more than anything else. So now let's come to a few examples and I'll show you how I would go about perhaps breaking it down before I even write the actual VAT. So we look at some topics which have actually come up in VATs, and I'll show you how I'll break them down. So one which has been discussed a lot this year and hence has come up in VATs is moonlighting, right? So the exact VAT, of course, will depend on the insured, but it can be around analyzing the causes, perhaps trying to prevent it, or maybe even just asking the students to give their opinion on moonlighting and should it be allowed. Now, when it comes to moonlighting, what it is essentially when a person is working in more than one job. So looking at this from two perspectives would be really important. So one is, looking at it from the perspective of the employee, and the other would be looking at it from the perspective of the employer. Now, here I would definitely recommend that you have a balanced view. You shouldn't take the call that, oh, it's really okay that, employees are doing it, given that, there are so many layoffs, so everybody should be allowed to do it, and so on and so forth. You should also not be very strict and say that, oh, there should be like, a lot of, maybe apps which are seeing what the employee is doing, even if they're working from home on the laptop and things like that, daily or weekly monitoring and all, and absolutely zero moonlighting. We really need to understand the situation and understand where it is fine and where it is not fine. So again, I'll probably try to do this as I'm breaking it up. So when we look at from the employee's perspective, for example, the first thing I would try to think of is why does an employee even do it, right? So the first, of course, would be more money. If somebody is working in more than one job, and this can be in the moonlighting situation itself, where let's say someone is working in a couple of tech firms at the same time, or even something like, where a cab driver is working for both Uber and Ola, or, a delivery executive is working for both Swiggy and Zomato, just to give examples. Obviously, the one which has come up in the limelight has been more around, the tech field, but more money is definitely one major reason. The other could be if the person is not very satisfied at work currently, so unhappy at work. So this could be maybe the person has not been promoted or not got a lot of increments, or the person feels that by now they should have they should be getting a lot more respect or different projects or something like that, right? So being unhappy or dissatisfied at work, you're not finding your work challenging, these are other reasons which could be there. The third, of course, is not super relevant when we look at moonlighting, is if you are not super passionate about your work. So if something else is your passion, so let's say a different interest or a different passion, then doing something around it. Now, why I'm saying that this is something which is not super relevant is because usually when we talk about moonlighting, we talk about two roles in the same sector. So if someone is working in a company and then perhaps writing a blog in their spare time, or they have some hobby which they are doing, maybe they have a social media page or a YouTube channel or something like that, usually it's fine unless they are really speaking about their company. So different interests might not be super relevant. One place that I can think of it is, of course, if you have something like let's say if someone's working in the tech field and in their free time also they are maybe they have some different hobby, but they're coming up with a tech solution based on that. So theoretically the employer can argue that any solution that you've come up while you are a salaried employee is actually the property of the employer. So there are a lot of contracts which include things like this, especially when people work in R&D or in product management, or just sort of innovation, that sort of things, right? So these are the main reasons. And one more thing which I would write is the major enabler for this, of course, has been the work from home scenario, right? Earlier, when everybody was going to the office and spending 8 to 10 hours in the office, it's very difficult for them to do anything other than maybe a side job for a few hours, right? So you can have someone like a teacher who's taking tuitions, or a techie who's maybe going home and doing maybe freelance project for 3 to 4 hours. You can't have it the way it's come out in the news now, where people are literally working for two companies full time, and there were articles where somebody was getting pension from more than two companies and so on. So work from home has become a major enabler, and that is something which is important, because in the solutions, that's what we have to address. So now that we have this, let's think of it from the employer's perspective. Why would an employer be against it? So again, this is something which has come out in the news. You also have companies like, let's say, the head of Swiggy saying that we are okay with it, and in our policies we've included this. At the same time, we've had a lot of tech firms, of course, come out and speak out against it and say this is something which is not possible. So the primary reasons why an employer might not want it, a lot of people would start with reasons like if you're working two jobs, then you don't have focus and all of that. But the much bigger issue is something like confidentiality, right? If I'm working in a company, I have access to confidential info, I have access to client data, I have access to product details itself, right? And product details, again, it could be from a tech perspective, it could be something like the code itself. If it is any form of, let's say, where there is a particular product, maybe a chemical formula or a medicine or something like that, again, there's access to sensitive information, which is obviously something which the company has developed. So this is the most important reason why a company would not want someone to moonlight. Think of like client data, right? If someone's working in two companies, and the one of the companies is working on a project which is not out in the open, this employee could theoretically go to the other company and say that hey, let's also pitch to this client. Or aside from that, of course, you have the entire work ethic itself, because most contracts will say that you cannot work in more than one place. So the fact that you're probably hiding it and working, that is something. Your performance itself is something which won't be great, because you are essentially working in two companies, so you're not giving your full time to this one company. Again, there's a debate over here saying that wherever there are companies where we are expected to work 8 to 10 hours, or whatever the number of hours it may be, whatever we do in our free time is our own. But if we are using our free time to relax, or even do things like read or learn more, or just replenish ourselves in some form, then the next day we are going refreshed to work and raring to go. Whereas if, let's say, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm working for one company, and then 6 p.m. to, let's say, midnight or something, I'm working for another company, of course I'm going to be tired and I'm not going to be at my best the next morning. So the performance also gets impacted. There could be a lot of things over and above our actual work which companies expect people to take up, and people who are doing two roles will obviously not be volunteering for these. So the overall motivation or the overall performance itself could come down. There are also other issues like this person could like sort of try to get other employees also to work, and in the second company, and so on and so forth. So now that we have these, now we can think of solutions, right? So the simple thing, of course, is to have something like a non-compete and to ensure that it's sort of really checked and tracked. I am not saying go the extent of having tracking devices and all put in an employee's laptop. That would be intrusion of privacy, and that would also be you might not be able to do it that way because the person can have two laptops, but some form of checking if people if people are working in their company or somewhere else, and just ensuring that these policies are communicated and people understand the issues when we do that. A lot of companies can also get together and just share some information about employees and all of that, perhaps maybe the PAN or the Aadhaar number or something like that, ensuring that this is not replicated. Again, there's a little bit of employee privacy and all that which comes up here, so it is a fine line, and it will have to be handled sensitively. The other things which are easier to handle are these, right? So why is it that someone is able to do two jobs? That means that that person is either not respected, not feeling like they have a good career path in the first job, or they have that much free time. So a lot of times, even things like these tech layoffs which are happening now, they're happening because companies went ahead and hired a lot of people when times are good or when they had access to a lot of investor funds, and some of these people might not have as much work now, right? So just ensuring that people are not just happy and satisfied at work, but also being challenged at work, in the sense that everybody should be part of a project. In IT, there are a lot of times when someone is on the bench, they don't have a project, so that those are probably times when they're more comfortable picking up stuff. So you should have as many employees as you have projects. There'll obviously be plus minus 10 to 20%, but it shouldn't be so much that half the year someone doesn't have projects, or someone's able to do their maybe 8 to 10 hours worth of work in 3 to 4 hours consistently. That sometimes also happens when someone is in middle management. So if I have a team of people, for example, am I delegating all of my work to them and not really pulling my own weight? So again, there could be, let's say for this meetings with the HR team, which could be a safe space where employees could explain how maybe the boss is making them do most of the work, not really available a lot of the time. There could also be skip level meetings, which is you're having a meeting with not your boss but your boss's boss or somebody senior. Again, these will have to be done in a way that the person feels comfortable talking about these things and stuff like that. You could even have anonymous surveys and stuff like that, just to try to ensure that people are happy, they are satisfied, and they have enough work which they want. Another thing which could be done is to if especially if money is the issue, to tell people that if they do this, this is the sort of bonus that they can expect at the end of the year, or maybe if they perform at this level, they can get promoted in the next 18 months, or perhaps even give them additional responsibilities within the company so that they feel engaged and they feel valued, right? So the challenge, again, there can be a lot of positive aspects to it. Work from home, again, if we at least have hybrid work, you instead of having complete work from home, maybe 2 to 3 days the employees coming to the office, at least to some extent this challenge is minimized. A lot of tech companies are also looking to cut costs and are encouraging employees to work from home, but sometimes if people come to the office, this problem, as well as more communication, more innovation, these are other benefits which could happen with personal live interaction, in-person interaction, or face-to-face interaction. So these are some of the solutions which I would think of based on this structure. And now once I have it, the way I would write the WAT is maybe a sentence or two explaining what is moonlighting, perhaps explaining the employee's perspective and then the employer's perspective. So that could be two short paragraphs or one paragraph. And then the body of my WAT would be about these solutions themselves. Do check out the video on the SAT essay in case if you haven't watched that. The exact writing style and all you'll find over there. So hopefully that's helpful. And all the best to you from everyone here at MOCAT.